Hello, Packers fans, wherever you may be. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. Sorry, it's been a few days. I was actually traveling for work, number one. And number two, I kind of needed a couple days away from the Packers Eagles game. I wanted to watch the All 22. I wanted to take a second look at the game itself. Um, it's good to try to step away because um, looking at YouTube, it's been very toxic, the reaction to the Eagles Packers game. My take on the game is the defense is ready to win a title, but the offense fell apart in that game due to injuries at wide receiver. If in looking at that game for a second time, I saw play after play where Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love were on the same page. They were calling up the right play, and there was a receiver that ran the wrong route, or there was a couple situations where a wide receiver would drop the ball, which was right in their shoulder pads. There was also an incident where a wide receiver that isn't used to being on the field as much actually ran the wrong route at a critical moment and crashed into Josh Jacobs, which really took away an outlet for Jordan Love. Now, I'm not saying Matt LaFleur doesn't have room for improvement. I'm not saying Jordan Love doesn't have room for improvement. But I believe if Matthew Golden had played in that game and if Romeo Doubs had not been knocked out halfway through the game, the Packers would have won the game against the Eagles. The defense gave up 10 points, and the offense just didn't hold up their end of the bargain, largely due to injuries at wide receiver. Uh, Looking at the tape, I am 100% convinced that this is fixable by better play calling by Matt LaFleur, being a steady leader with Jordan Love, which he already is, and the wide receivers getting healthy. If we can get our wide receivers back by the playoffs, I think this team will be just fine. There's still plenty of opportunities to win the NFC North and get a good seed in the NFC for the playoffs. We need to shake this off, and the Packers need to win against the Giants. They need to win against the Vikings. I'll actually be in Green Bay for Packers versus Vikings to watch that personally. And they need to win in Detroit. I need to see 3 solid wins by this Packer team. So I need the Packers to use the game against the Giants and the game against the Vikings to get healthy and tuned up for the game against the Lions, which could easily decide the division. So we need to shake off the game against the Eagles. I still think that was a game they could have won 9 times out of 10 if the players had been healthy. Um, the switch at center probably didn't help that much, although I think Sean Ryan did a very solid job. But I think it was the wide receivers and their lack of experience that really let this offense down. And if you watch the tape, there's play after play where there's drop passes that if a better receiver was in there, like Matthew Golden or Romeo Doubs, those passes would not have been dropped. So we need to turn the page, turn the negativity aside, and focus on one game at a time. And that means we need to focus on the Giants. So the Giants are coming up on Sunday, and we need to focus on that. Then we need to focus on the Vikings. Then we need to focus on the Lions. And then we need to build momentum as a team. There's no reason to believe that this team cannot be successful this year if the offense gets itself right. So let's go on to the Giants. First of all, important note, Sean Ryan is likely the center for the rest of the year. Matt LaFleur came out and he said it's highly unlikely Elgton Jenkins will be back this year to play for the Packers. And I'll go one step further and I'll say I don't believe Elgton Jenkins will play another snap for the Packers because he's not got no guaranteed money in his contract. He has a really big cap number for next year, and I think the Packers will move on with a cheaper option. Now, one of the cheaper options that they can look at next year is actually Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan, when he's come in limited snaps as a center, has actually played fairly well. And I think he might be a lower cost solution for the Packers at center next year. They could take that Elton Jenkins money, and if Sean Ryan plays good enough this year, give him the opportunity to stay in a Packers uniform as the center. He's lost his job at right guard, so he's already moved to center for the rest of this year, barring injury. And if he plays well, I think there's a really good opportunity that the Packers could make Sean Ryan their center of the future. I've always thought Sean Ryan gets the wrong end of the stick in a lot of situations with the Packers. Coaching staff has always been a little hard on him. I think Sean Ryan has the next couple months to see if he could be a center for the future for the Packers. And it can't be any worse because Elton Jenkins really wasn't playing that great at center anyways. So I think we will probably move on from Elton Jenkins with this injury and his salary cap number for next year. It just makes sense. He really isn't playing well enough to pay him at center the contract that he has for next year. And he has no guaranteed money next year, so the Packers could just cut him and move on. So I think that's what's going to happen with Elton Jenkins. Now, let's look at the injury report because things are actually looking better for the Packers. And I think that's going to be a big part of how they can turn this thing around and get a win against the Giants and get a win against the Vikings over the next 2 weeks. So let's take a look at that injury report for the Green Bay Packers. All right. We've got our Amplify Health injury report brought to you by Packers.com. And let's take a look at the key players that we want to talk about injury-wise with the Packers. Okay, Elton Jenkins, full participation. Romeo Doubs, full participation. I never got a firm idea with what happened with Romeo Doubs, but the fact that he was a full participant today makes me wonder exactly what happened with Romeo Doubs at the end of that game. Because I think if Romeo Doubs was in that game, they needed a couple receptions to get into field goal range, and I think it would have changed everything if he was playing. Kingsley Enagbare, limited participation. These Wednesday simulated and Thursday actual. They had a walkthrough on Wednesday, so they figure out what they would do if they would actually practice versus a walkthrough. Matthew Golden, limited participation Wednesday, Thursday. I'd like to see him get a full participation on Friday to guarantee that he'll be able to play this week. He's another player that I think if he was in at the end of that game against the Eagles, the Packers could have won that game. The defense certainly held up their side of the bargain. Nate Hobbs is going to be out for this week as expected. No reason to talk about him. Micah Parsons has a pectoral injury. I think this is a minor injury combined with veteran rest. So he participated on Wednesday and Thursday. Zach Tom, same thing with him with his back injury. Limited participation Wednesday and Thursday. Lucas Van Ness, this is big news. Limited participation on Thursday. If he gets limited participation again on Friday, I think it opens the door for Lucas Van Ness to get limited snaps in the game against the Giants. When Lucas Van Ness was in that cheetah package with Micah Parsons, it really worked well the first couple weeks of the season. So getting him back in to play maybe some speed defensive tackle on limited reps would be a great addition for the Packers this week. Quay Walker, full participation, not worried about him. Christian Watson, limited participation. It does say knee/hamstring. The hamstring is new. We got to watch that very carefully and see if he could be a full limited participation on Friday. But it's hard to tell with Christian Watson because he's on limited participation because of his knee injury. But we also know he has a history of hamstring injuries. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. We definitely need every experienced wide receiver that we could get in the game on Sunday. Dontavian Wicks, limited participation in this game. Limited participation. We'll see what happens there. Then we have Savion Williams, foot injury, limited participation Wednesday and Thursday. So overall, the Packers are getting healthier, hopefully at that key wide receiver position. And if they can just get some better, consistent play out of the wide receiver position, I think this offense will be much better over the next couple weeks. Regardless of how well the defense is playing, you're not going to win many games in the NFL unless you can score at least 20 points in a game. 7 points is not going to get it done against the Giants, against the Vikings, and certainly not against the Lions. So we need to improve that over the next couple weeks. Let's take a look at the New York Giants. This is the first report we have for the Giants. Adebo is limited with a knee injury. Bellinger, tight end, is limited with a groin injury. Jackson Dart is something we have to watch very closely. He's on the concussion protocol right now. He didn't participate Wednesday. He didn't participate Thursday. Now, there's a couple things to factor in with Jackson Dart. Number one, either he clears the concussion protocol or he doesn't. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the team just switched coaches. They have a new coach. Jackson Dart is definitely a key part of the future, and the season is kind of over for the Giants. So if I'm a new coach that's trying to win the job going forward, do I want to risk my starting quarterback if he's not fully recovered from a concussion? Now, he's recovered and he's out of the protocol, and he's in the protocol. And sometimes teams will be extra cautious beyond the concussion protocol. So we'll have to watch that very closely. I think Jackson Dart gives the Giants the X factor that makes them competitive against teams that are better than them. So Jackson Dart playing in this game is going to be a really big factor. So we're going to watch that very closely. As far as other injuries here, just kind of filtering through. Their kicker was placed on IR, so he's going to be out for the year. They have another kicker on their roster that they're actually fond of, so that might actually be by choice that they placed him on IR. Chauncey Golston has a neck injury, did not participate. Neville Hewitt did not participate. This might actually be a team, if you look at this injury report, that has worse injury problems than the Packers right now. And again, there's the medical decision and there's the coaching decision. Do the Giants decide to be extra cautious about their injuries, looking at the long-term health for the players? Because they have a lot of players with injury problems, and they're not going anywhere this season. So we might see the Giants really lean into being extra cautious with who they play in this game, which is probably why the Packers are favored so highly in this game. So that's going to do it for the injury report. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Pack Attack Cast. Starting tomorrow, we're going to give you more information on the injury report. We're going to get the super critical Friday afternoon injury report. We're going to take a look at keys to the game to beating the Giants. And it's really go time for the Packers. If they cannot beat the Giants in this game, then there is something seriously wrong with them. Because I saw them almost beat the defending Super Bowl champions with a third of their team injured. So the talent is there, the coaching is there, the defense is there. They have to find enough things on offense to win games against the Giants and the Vikings, and then we'll worry about the Lions on Thanksgiving. So while there's a lot of gloom and doom about the Eagles game, I saw a team that was fighting to the end. I saw a team that was just a couple injuries away from beating the defending Super Bowl champion. So we need to keep that in mind, keep our heads up, and support our Packers. And as always, go Pack Go. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. We'll have an edition on Friday. We'll have an edition on Saturday. On Sunday, I'm traveling for work, but I will try to do something remote while I'm traveling after the game. And then, so we'll do our pregame show on Saturday. So we'll talk to you later. As always, go Pack Go and support those Packers. Once again, thank everybody who subscribes. I want to thank everybody who subscribes. We actually got to over 12,000 subscribers last week. Can we get to 14,000 subscribers before the Thanksgiving game? I'd love to see it, and you guys can make it happen. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you tomorrow.